Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to allow for attendees to get filtered in here, and we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. Our speaker today, Sonia Hughes, has had a family emergency and is unable to speak. Dan Russell, Sr. with Tryon Solutions was scheduled to speak for us on October 7th and has graciously agreed to fill in. He will be talking today about diversity, equity, inclusion, and opening the conversation and how to make intentional changes in the workplace. Please follow our weekly bulletin for when Sonia will be able to speak in the near future. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it over to Molly.
Thank you, Brenda. And yes, thank you everyone for being here with us today. Just a few housekeeping tips. This session today will be recorded and posted on our website and our social media channels within 24 hours. Additionally, this is an opportunity for you to get engaged, for you to ask any questions that you may have, any comments that you may have. We definitely want to hear from you. So how you're able to do so is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a Q&A box. Within that box, you can go ahead and submit all of your questions there. For privacy reasons, I never read the name of the person asking the question, but if you don't feel comfortable with even myself knowing your name, there is an anonymous button as well where you can submit those questions. So we will be saving all questions for the end of this webinar today, and then Dan will be going over those with us. So on that note, I would now like to turn it over to Doug DeYoung from Consumers Energy. Consumers is our presenting sponsor for our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series for 2020. So Doug, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Molly. Appreciate that. My name is Doug DeYoung. I'm the Community Affairs Manager for Northwest Michigan for Consumers Energy. Consumers Energy is honored to be able to help sponsor Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion seminar, able to really open this discussion in our communities here in Northwest Michigan. At Consumers Energy, diversity and inclusion is part of our culture. It's not a number on a scorecard or a graph on a scorecard. It's part of what we do every day. It's part of our safety and our commitment to not only employees, but to our communities and our customers. We have employee resource groups that focus on educational opportunities for customers and employees, focus on really a lot of the alignment and a lot of the direct that we work with as we move forward as a company on this diversity, equity, and inclusion path. With that, I just would like to thank everyone for joining today. This is an opportunity to engage. I would also just say that Consumers Energy is very committed to West Michigan. In the last several during this COVID situation, we've been able to bring close to $500,000 in funding nonprofits, area nonprofits, assisting those in our communities, as well as working with Venture North here at Evers Connect to provide for the region's resiliency fund, which focuses on helping small businesses. So we hope you enjoy this seminar today and hope you enjoy our speaker, and I will send it back over to Brenda. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning, and thank you, Doug. We appreciate your continued support, and thank you to everyone joining us today for taking the time to listen and share. I am Brenda McClellan, Director of Investor Engagement with Evers Connect, and have the opportunity to introduce you to Daniel Russell Sr. It has been my pleasure getting to know Dan over the last couple of months, and I'm excited for everyone to hear today to listen and talk with him. So Dan is the Director of National Corporate Sales for Tryon Solutions. He is an experienced business professional with an extensive background in employee administration and business management. Dan also has served several years of experience in banking and finance industry with Wachovia Bank and Wells Fargo, serving as vice president. In addition to his employee administration and banking experience, Dan has also trained and developed business owners and entrepreneurs across all types of business sectors. He is a well-respected professional motivational speaker, guiding business owners, entrepreneurs, young adults with engaging and inspiring content. Dan serves on the following boards: Winning Futures, a young mentoring program for Southeast Michigan, the Board of Directors for Hope Against Trafficking, Troy Rotary Board, and the Covenant House Detroit boards. Please join me in a warm virtual welcome for Dan Russell. Thank you so much for being here today, Dan.
Thank you, Brenda. I greatly appreciate it. And, thank you for the opportunity. And everybody on today, thank you for taking the time, because this is how we all grow together. This is how we all get better. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity for us to just grow, learn how we can help our own communities, how we can help others. And listen, the first thing I'm going to say is this has been a challenging time. I think it's been a challenging time for all of us. I think there's been a lot of emotion that a lot of people have expressed. There's been a lot of disappointment. There's been a lot of really tough media coverage. And I think the hardest part for everyone now is we all want to do something. You're not on this Zoom meeting today because you didn't have anything else to do. We all want to get better in this space. And, some of the initial challenges that we all face is some of the things that we are trying to fix and make better are things that have gone on for a number of years. And some of the questions that I get from people so often is they've said, Dan, I don't know how I feel. I think I'm supposed to feel guilty. I feel like I'm supposed to feel responsible. And the first thing that I tell people is no one should feel guilty for things that happened years ago. No one should feel the responsibility to answer for what other people have done. Yet we all still have a responsibility for the greater good of humankind and just doing great things to help others get ahead. One of the challenges also that I've heard people express, especially in communities like Traverse City, is I've had people come up to me and they've said, Dan, it's not that I don't want to hire more minorities, there just aren't minorities in our area. And I really would like to open these opportunities up to others, but when I have no applicants, what do I do? Another challenge that people are faced with is they've said, Dan, I don't really know how to open this conversation up with people within my organization without offending anyone. And I think we've all seen this. It broke my heart over the last several months to see people, even on social media, when they were trying to take a step forward and trying to help, and you just saw so many people just jump all over them because maybe their wording wasn't exactly right. One of the areas I like to help educate people is, I'm sure we've all seen where someone has maybe posted something about Black Lives Matter, and then someone comes back with either Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, and then next thing you know, it is a social media throwdown, right? I mean, I think we've all seen it, whether it's on our own personal pages or a friend's page. Everybody right now is walking on eggshells. And one of the things that I've had to help people understand is, number one, we can't generalize right now. We can't generalize people of any ethnicity, race, or background. We can't generalize police. We can't generalize businesses. That's where we take a step back. And unfortunately, I think we've all seen it's happening on all sides. You're getting people that are saying the whole Black Lives Matter movement is horrible. Well, that's not true. There are people, unfortunately, who are rioting and setting fires and just doing horrible things that I don't think anybody is condoning. And then on the other side, my goodness, I know so many amazing police officers, and there's so many people that serve our community and give back, and they put their life on the line every single day, and we're so grateful and thankful for those people. So I don't think it's fair that we lump everyone in together. But something that I've tried to help some people understand is they've said, Dan, why are people so bothered if someone says Black Lives Matter and then they respond back with All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter? And there's a couple examples I'd like to share with you today, and hopefully these are some things you hang on to. One of the things that I've said to people is, if all of us together today said we were going to go to a breast cancer rally, and we said, oh my goodness, what an amazing cause. We want to go to this fundraiser. We want to go support breast cancer awareness. And we got there. You would never find somebody walking up to us saying, hey, breast cancer isn't the only cancer that matters. What about liver cancer? What about pancreatic cancer? What about throat cancer? All cancer matters. So I hope when I give you guys that analogy, it helps you understand that, goodness, when we, let's say we did a fundraiser for the police in our community and we talked about how much they matter, absolutely, that is the time that we should be talking about supporting our police. That's the time that we should be talking about, you know, how hard it is to hear about some of the things that our local law enforcement is going through right now. That's the platform for that. You know, it's, I used an analogy the other day that someone really enjoyed. I said, as a husband, if my wife came up to me and said, honey, do you love me? And my response was, well, I love everybody. You know, I love our kids. I love our friends. I love my parents. That's not the response she's looking for. I may need a divorce attorney soon after, right? The reality is, you know, she wants to hear at that moment that I love her. And so as we are looking at some of the different people that are just trying to express challenges that the African American culture is facing right now, I would hope that people can look and see, it's not that anyone's trying to say that others don't matter, but at that point in time, they're speaking about the social injustice that they've experienced. Now, I've had the ability to talk to some people about, you know, really some very personal things, even in my own life. Unfortunately, I have had to experience some challenging events throughout my life. I've seen it even with my children. I have 6 children, and we've seen sometimes just some hate and some things that really are very hard to grasp. But one of the things that I always try to do is I try to help people see it as one individual, not as a group of people, not even as a community, but as one. So I say all that to lead into the challenge that we now have with diversity and inclusion and equity, right? As we're looking in West Michigan, well, the population of minorities in West Michigan may not be that great. So there's a few things I want to bring to you today. Number one, access. Okay, so when people say, Dan, what do you mean by access? Well, so many minorities or people of color or underserved communities may not even understand that a job at your organization exists. I had a chance the other day to speak with the president of a credit union, and he talked about, you know, really wanting to drive more minorities to come work at his credit union. And he said, I don't have the people applying, and maybe they don't even know the positions are available. And so we talked about things like job fairs. We talked about things like internships, going through into different community organizations or schools to actually help people to even become aware of what type of jobs are out there. So I want you to stop for a moment and think about when most people go to college or trade school, they're deciding at that point in time the career path that they're going to go on. But where do they find out about that career? Most people found out because maybe their mother or father did it. Maybe they have a family friend or a family member that's their line of work. Or maybe they've had an interaction with that professional. Maybe they went to a doctor's office and that nurse really touched them and they said, hey, I'd like to become a nurse. But how do you find out about all of these jobs? I'm sure all of you today who are on this, you know, some of your organizations are unique. Maybe it's a mortgage company. Well, guess what? In high school, you have no idea how to obtain a mortgage. You don't even know what a mortgage is for the most part. There may be a company that's doing IT work. Well, when you're in high school, you haven't learned quite enough about that to even know that job opportunity is available. So one of the biggest first steps is access, because when you provide access, it now provides exposure. And that's the next thing. So exposure for your organization, exposure for the jobs that are available. So maybe it's not a paid internship. Maybe it's just a summer internship that you're providing for people to come in and be exposed, not just now to that type of job or that industry, but how about what makes your organization special? Because Each one of you have your own personal spin. You've got your corporate culture that I hope you're proud of. And when you now expose someone to that corporate culture, my goodness, they can hear or see what it is that you're doing and get excited about it and say, hey, I'd love to work for a company like that. Or maybe that's something I really would like to pursue as a career path. So access and exposure is something that, especially when you look at underserved communities, they're underprivileged children and young adults that just don't have the opportunity. You may have a single mom at home with 4 or 5 kids. Those kids, unfortunately, may be raising themselves. They may be doing everything they can just to get through high school, let alone starting to figure out what a career is going to look like. Maybe you have jobs or careers within your organization that they don't need a college degree. Maybe they need trade school. Maybe they don't need either. Maybe they need a great personality and an amazing work ethic. When you give some of these young adults the opportunity to become aware that it exists, a big step happens. Now, the final 2 things that I really want to present you with is, number 1, awareness. So awareness right now is something that's very sensitive. It's very hard for any of you that are on the Zoom call today, if you're not an African-American man, to understand what it is to be one. No different than I can't talk to Molly or Brenda about what it is to be a woman. I have no idea. I have a wife and 3 daughters, and I can't begin to understand them. So I guarantee you, I can't tell you what it's like to be a woman. I can't tell you what it's like to maybe be a young adult right now, coming out of high school. I can tell you what it was like when I graduated high school, but I can't tell you what it's like to be them today. So awareness right now, when you start to show grace, when you start to show empathy, when you start to seek understanding, that awareness aspect really opens up the door. So when I talk about awareness, maybe within your own organization, taking the time to have a conversation, not just with minorities within your organization, but all people. Maybe you have an organization that you don't have a lot of women that work at your organization. Maybe talk to the women that do work there. Maybe you only have 1 minority working at your organization. Sit down and have a conversation with them. Maybe set up a roundtable discussion. Maybe set up a panel of people within your company to address some of these issues. Because when we go back to exposure and we talk about that corporate culture and that community awareness, well, if somebody comes into your organization and they look around, some people may not apply because they don't see anyone that looks like them. And while for all of us, that may sound like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. You've got a great opportunity ahead of you. Unfortunately, some people will look, and if they don't see anyone in an organization that looks like them, they may see that as a barrier, and they may see it as something that's very scary, and also possibly something that's unattainable. So in order to have awareness, we have to be able to accept that it's okay that you don't understand what it is to be a minority if you're not. You don't understand what it is to be maybe a young adult, a woman, an Indian American, an Asian American, an African American. We can't begin to understand. And when you have that awareness and you come to that acceptance and that reality, what I've found is, especially in the Black community right now, they're okay with that. They're okay with you saying, listen, Dan, I don't understand what it is. And I can't begin to pretend that I understand, that I know what it is to be a Black man in the United States today. But when you start with that, you say, but can you help me understand, or maybe can you help me understand how together we can improve the relations going on in America today? Because I think we're all noticing that, first off, America is the best place to live. There's so much opportunity. There's so much available to anyone that really wants to work. And unfortunately, I think we're all brokenhearted and disturbed recently at the division that's taking place. And I think people are very passionate about their opinions right now. So I think it's something that still needs to be approached very delicately. However, it is an important thing to help others know that you do care, you do understand, and we are trying to do things to get better. And the final thing that I want to leave you with is education. Just last night, I spoke on another panel, and a young man he typed into the chat and he said, I come from an all-white community. He said, how can I help myself become more aware of some of the challenges that are facing the African-American community? And I was moved by that, because I looked, this young man was probably in his early 20s. He had logged onto this panel just so he could learn how he could get better. And what I think we all need to do as people is figure out how we can all support one another. And there's a lot of different resources. Listen, what Traverse City is doing right now, you guys have a really exciting event coming up in the first quarter of next year, where as organizations, you can all come together. You can learn how to create a safer workplace and more diversity and inclusion. Just what you're doing today is a step forward, because this is education. But don't lose it. So after today, maybe it's a book you read. Maybe it's a movie you watch. Maybe it's a conversation you engage with another friend. I will tell you, over the last 6 months, I have had more people reach out to me that I maybe haven't spoken to in years, and they've said, Dan, I've always considered you a friend. We haven't spoken in a number of years. Can we talk about this? Because somebody told me I had white privilege, and man, that really hurt my feelings, because I had to work my tail off. And I was able to talk to them, and I was able to say to them, listen, I don't subscribe to that terminology of white privilege, because I think everybody's had to work very hard to get to where they've been able to get to in their careers and in their life. So I think by saying someone had privilege, I think we missed the mark. But again, I had the opportunity to help them understand that a few generations ago, my ancestors were not able to go to the same college that maybe their ancestors did. So was that maybe a head start for them? Yeah, that's okay to say. And I think we can all agree that we look back not that long ago, and it was very different when people were able to even vote. Some of those challenges were there not that long ago. Now, we've gotten far past that today, but some of those challenges were there. When you look at Fortune 500 companies, when you look at CEOs, when you look at presidents, even some of you on the call today, when you look at your executive board and you don't see the representation that you would like to see being very diverse, well, again, that challenge is still there, but we are making strides. So continuing to educate one another. And the last thing that I'll leave you with today, and this one is very near and dear to me, have conversations with your family. Have open conversations with your friends. Because I know personally, my mother marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And there were things that she was able to teach me, and there were things that she was able to impart into my life from that experience. But then over the years of growing up, how did you learn about all of it? You learn from your friends, you learn from TV, you learn from the radio or movies and things like that. And now people are really being, dare I say, influenced by social media and the news. And so you may go home and think that your children know exactly how you feel. Maybe you don't see that they are being influenced by maybe kids at school or social media or other things like that. Listen, this is an opportunity for us to really address a very sensitive issue. But when you go home and you're able to talk to your children, that really, really helps them to formulate their thoughts, because they can see where you are. And I've had people come up to me and tell me, Dan, my mom and dad were racist, and the things that they said at home weren't good. So I had to learn to become accepting. And, the other day I have a dear friend who serves on a police force. He's a white gentleman, and his daughter asked him a very interesting question, a 13-year-old girl. She said to him, why are the Russells different? And he said, what do you mean? And she said, well, like some of the people that are saying that they want to kill cops and that they hate white people. Well, why are the Russells different? And the answer he gave, I think, was so powerful, because he looked at her and he said, it's not about color, it's about individual people. And we always have to stop and look at that one person in front of us, who they are individually to us, how they treat us, and then we need to move on based on that. So I think continuing to educate one another, continuing to make steps, continuing to have intentional things within your organization, whether it's job fairs, whether it's internships, whether it's open forum seminars, whether you're bringing a speaker in, just to speak to your organization about how they treat their fellow coworkers and maybe even your clients and customers, making sure that your company is representing exactly what you want your corporate culture to be. That, I think, is the answer for how we all together can move on and continue to make steps forward. Because I think, again, as I said, the U.S. is an amazing, amazing place to live, and there's no place else I would rather be. And then even when I look at a community like Traverse City, I'll tell you what, the Russell family loves visiting Traverse City, okay? It is one of the hidden gems of Michigan. We love it, and it's because of all the people like you on today. So thank you again for the opportunity, and Brenda, I'll turn it over for some questions now.
Thank you, Dan. I know that Molly's going to ask you some questions. Go ahead, Molly, and I saw that there's some in there that maybe I can answer because I don't think that Dan wants to share what we're doing in our 2021 summit.
Yeah, of course. So we do have a handful of questions, so I will kind of dive right in here. So someone just definitely had a comment that there shouldn't there be awareness and representation on all levels of an organization? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think that is key right now. Oh my goodness. And I think you're 100% correct. And that's why I hope I said this in my speech, that, listen, it's not just about Black culture. It's not just about Asian Americans, Indian Americans. You're right. There should be an awareness overall within your culture of your corporation. And I think that's something where, as a board, as an executive team, as an HR department, that's where you need to come together and say, okay, what areas do we see that we're weak in, that we can, that we realize we need improvement, and let's put something together where we can address each of these issues. So at the end of 2021, you can sit down and say, we've improved where maybe we've got a younger culture in our office. Maybe we've increased minority support in the community. Maybe we've increased diversity within our organization as a whole. You are 100% correct. That awareness and that education should be across all platforms. I agree 100%.
Perfect. And these two questions kind of go hand in hand, so I'm going to ask them together. So the first question is, how do you get people who are not only white men in leadership positions? And that question that pairs well with it is, do you have any recommendations for beginning DE&I within your business?
Great questions. There's a couple things. Number one, if you don't have, dare I say, intentional meetings with your staff, they don't know that there may be a growth plan for them available. They don't know that there may be a growth track within your organization. So if I say, hey, I'd love to become an executive at your organization, but I don't know how, well, again, let's just say I'm working at your local bank or your local credit union. Well, I'm a teller today, but I don't know, how do I become a branch manager? Maybe how could I become a vice president? How could I become a director? But if I don't know how to ever get there, a lot of times mentally, the people don't see it's available. So what I would say is make sure that you're, number one, sitting down with your team members, be intentional about it. Leaders, I don't want to put the pressure on you, but I have to put the pressure on you. It is the presidents, it's the CEOs, it's your HR directors. All three of you should be working together, and don't become that person that's so far removed that new hire doesn't feel like you know who they are. Make it a point to see those people. Make it a point to talk to each of your employees and let them know that you want to raise up from within and help people to grow within your organization. Then put together a surgical plan of what that looks like. I see a lot of organizations that will do tuition reimbursement to maybe help someone go on and obtain a higher level of education or certification to then improve themselves to move up within an organization. It's things like that where you start. And then, Molly, I'd say, organizations like ours, Tryon Solutions, there's tons of us out there, right? There's a lot of organizations that what we do is we can actually take and say, we've got a large organization, we've got a small organization, we have a medium-sized organization, and we can say, wow, Brenda, we see the company that you own is about 50 employees. Well, we have another client like that, and here's something that they've done to improve diversity and inclusion and bring some of those, dare I say, tactics into your own organization where you can then make it your own. But that is, you have to be intentional, you have to have a plan, and you have to make sure that everybody within your organization knows and understands that.
I definitely agree with that. What do you say to closed-minded individuals who use justification when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? I want to see things from both sides, but I also don't know how to educate or have a conversation with someone who truly does not understand and is not necessarily willing to learn.
That's tough, right? I mean, we're all products of our environment. I mean, no matter how you slice it, we are. And I think it's hard when you are trying to get someone who is, as they said, closed-minded, and they don't want to see change. Maybe they don't think things are very real. I had someone say to me, "Come on, Dan, some of the stuff they're talking about, it's not really that bad, is it?" And they said, "Dan, you've never had issues with the police, right?" And I've had to tell them, I have. You heard in my biography that I was a vice president of several banks. I'm a national director of a corporate company. I remember one morning a few years back driving down Woodward Avenue in Bloomfield Hills, and I got pulled over, and I wasn't speeding, and I got pulled out of my car, and they searched my entire car. And as my employees are driving past, they're seeing me with my hands on the hood, and it was embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. And they went through my wallet. They asked why I had Canadian money. I had just taken my entire family to Canada on a vacation, and it was Monday morning. I'm just getting back, and the guy said it was a likely excuse. And thank God I had the receipt from the hotel in my glove box, and I was let go after 45 minutes, but they still could never tell me why they pulled me over. They didn't say I failed to yield. They didn't say I was speeding. They didn't say I was doing anything. But unfortunately, those things happen. That's one. That is one story that is story on top of story on top of story. But the tough thing about it, Molly, is this. I can't expect someone else to understand if they haven't experienced it. I can't expect people to understand what it's like to tell my children as they're walking in our community across the street and a truck drives by with a Confederate flag and they throw things at them and scream out obscenities at them when they're just young kids. That's something as a parent you have to go home and you have to answer. You have to have a different conversation with your child if they're a young Black adult than you may if they're a young white adult. And it's a reality, and we're getting better. I truly believe we're getting better, but when someone is closed-minded and they don't want to get better or learn, listen, there's nothing you can do but make change. You can control your environment, you can control your actions, you can help influence your circle, your family, and what you have responsibility of in your organization. And when you do that, if all of a sudden they see, wow, look, there's increased diversity over here, and maybe this person brought a new flair to our organization we weren't expecting. All of a sudden now, that person who was closed-minded may look and see, maybe I'm wrong. I understand that in many people's lives, and it still blows my mind sometimes, I may be one of the first Black people they've ever encountered or had a conversation with. And when I stop and think about that, I go, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to help them shape their thoughts beyond what they've seen on the news or a movie or in a basketball game. Now they may leave and say, wow, maybe my perspective was wrong. So with closed-minded people, I truly believe it's not for us to argue and try to convince them. It's really just for us to show them and show them results.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. And this question goes hand in hand with everything you just said. And it's, what do you say to the people who think it's only the media making it out to look worse than what it really is? Because I've heard that tons of times. This is a great question.
Yeah. I'll share something very personal with you guys. When I can tell a story about 20 years ago being pulled out of my vehicle and beat up by the police when I lived in Tennessee, that was a horrific moment in my life. Again, I didn't do anything. I got pulled over. I had Michigan plates in Tennessee, and it was different. And I remember being curled up in a ball, terrified if I was going to make it home that night. But then fast forward to just about a month and a half ago. At 5 a.m., I got a phone call, and I was half awake. I go to answer. The phone call had ended. Then my wife answered, and she said, "What? You've got to be kidding. He's on his way right now." And she hung up the phone, and my 21-year-old son had woke up. He'd gone for a jog in our neighborhood, in what we consider an amazing community. I love the people in the community we live in. But a car drove. They pulled into a neighborhood. They circled back. They drove up the street again. And then they pulled in a neighborhood and waited for my son to pass by jogging, and they sped up and tried to hit him. So as a father, I can't expect someone else to understand what that feels like. I can't expect someone else to say, "Oh, I understand." Listen, up in Western Michigan, we've heard the stories, right? We've seen some of the things that people have said make national news. And gosh, those were hurtful statements. We've heard about people having, homemade bombs thrown through their window with the intention of killing a family. I would say to those people, listen, are we getting better as a nation? Absolutely. Unfortunately, though, they're still bad out there. Is it bad just toward blacks? No, I wouldn't say that at all. As you guys heard, I serve on a board for an organization. We help women who are victims of human trafficking. It breaks my heart to know that it happens every day. People say, "Dan, why do you serve on that committee?" It's because I have a wife and 3 daughters that, thank God, have never had to experience that. But that doesn't make it any less real. Because my wife and daughters have not had to deal with trafficking does not mean that somebody else's daughter, somebody else's wife, and somebody else's future mother is not going through that today. So I can pretend that it doesn't exist, and I can put my head in the sand, or I can make a difference. So I would just say, for the people that don't believe that some of these things are real, listen, I get it and I understand, because they haven't had to experience it. And if you haven't, it's very hard to understand. Now, will the media put their own spin on it? Absolutely. I do agree with that. I do agree that there are some things maybe that are getting blown out of proportion. I think there are some things that, when that same message just keeps getting delivered over and over and over, it's dividing us, instead of let's make the awareness there, or let's bring awareness and let's make sure the message is delivered that it does exist. But then let's talk about ways to get better, instead of continuously talking about all the bad.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. And someone did comment, great analogy too.
Thank you.
Another comment that we had come in is, how do you create an environment that creates belonging for minorities over the long term in a company that is majority white or majority male? How can you support employees to contribute to that?
That's a great question. And when you think about it, you stop and look at what your organization looks like today, and then think about what you want to look like 10 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, then maybe a year from now. Well, how do you do that? You bring your team together, because if we don't have this forum today, you don't have the opportunity to hear words from an African-American man who maybe is saying something very different from what you've heard on TV and what you've heard on the radio or what you've read in the newspaper. So if we don't have those open forums, then guess what? We together as an organization don't have the opportunity to see what makes different people special. That is what, diversity and inclusion and equity really looks like. You're allowing people to be okay being themselves. I had a conversation with a dear friend, and they said, "Dan, I don't see color. I don't see you as black." And I had to help them understand. I said, "Listen, I love you and I understand exactly what you mean." I said, "But I want you to see that I'm black. I'm proud that I'm black. I'm proud that I have Native American heritage. I am absolutely 100% proud to be a black male in America today. I don't want you to make me clear. It's okay to see me as black, but just don't judge me or treat me differently because I'm black." So now, in order to bring people together and start to promote that, well, what you do is, maybe it is only one minority, maybe it is only a couple females. Well, maybe those people aren't in an executive position yet. That's okay. But let's put some things together where they can have influence in the corporate culture. Maybe it is different, councils you're putting together, or things that you're looking to support people in the community. Okay, great. So now let's say there's a outside organization that you want to support in your community. Maybe it's outside of Traverse City, and you bring a panel of people together that are all representatives of different cultures and backgrounds, and they go out and they serve this high school, maybe some underprivileged children, maybe it's a trafficking organization, whatever it is. But now they get a chance to come back and present to the whole company what they did. You get a chance to see that woman have a place to engage and also show improvement in what they were able to do. You see that minority, and all of a sudden that African American person, that Indian American, that Asian American, they have a chance to show their flair, their culture. Maybe you do different things where you have different things at your office where you celebrate diversity, and you have different events at the office to celebrate the diversity of your culture or other people within the community. I think all of those things are very big. And then the final thing I'll say is, maybe if in your area, your company, your community, listen, let's just call it what it is. Maybe there aren't any minorities, and there are not any minorities that are signing up to work at your organization. Then maybe you find a cause that's near and dear to you. Maybe you find a cause that you say, we want to help support. Listen, there's people that are supporting people in India and Pakistan and China and Africa, right? You stay up late enough and you watch TV. There's enough of it, right? You always feel bad. You're like, I'm going to donate to everybody, right? I've got more kids sponsored around the country. I know what to do with. But what I'm going to say is, why can't we sponsor kids in Grand Rapids? Why can't we sponsor kids in Lansing? Why can't we sponsor kids in Detroit? So maybe you may go to a high school or a charter school or somewhere that is maybe underserved. Maybe your IT company, maybe you go in there and you work with them for a day. Maybe you send a group of employees down there, or maybe you bring those kids on a field trip to your organization. I mean, there's so many neat things that can be done. But I think when we start to continue to promote helping others and empowering people within your organization to do more, even if they're not at an executive level, I think that's when people have an opportunity to shine. And that's when other people, when they come to apply and work at your company, they'll see that you celebrate all types of diversity, all types of people, and all types of levels at your company. That's going to be the type of corporate culture that people want to be in and around.
Definitely. I love that too. I love your idea of suggesting that you work with people in your own community and sponsor those types of kids and individuals. That I think that's a really great recommendation. Someone did have a comment from earlier that I wanted to read because I thought it was impactful. So this is a comment in response to the person that asked about closed-minded people and what to do about it. I often stay motivated as a white person striving to be an ally, but by thinking about how my Black friends and colleagues are often asked and forced into the emotional labor of educating closed-minded people, and how that is exhausting and only adds to their burden. If I can have one conversation or several that lessens the burden on Black people, then I want to do that, and it feels personal and motivating to me to think of it this way.
Wow, wow, wow. Whoever you are, please, if you don't want to stay anonymous, shoot me an email. They'll make sure you guys have my information. I would love to just commend you for that statement, because one of the organizations I spoke to, there was a woman that got up and she said exactly what you just said. She said, as an African-American woman, I'm tired. She said, I'm hurt. She said, the things that have happened with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd in Wisconsin, all these things, she said, I'm hurt. And she said, and I don't feel it's my responsibility to speak on behalf of all Black people. And I had to stop and I had to think, and I said, oh my goodness, everybody isn't me. I feel a responsibility. When Brenda asked me to speak, I 100% without question said, I love Traverse City. I love the people of Traverse City. I'm so happy to do it. And then even when she said, can you fill in? Of course, because I want to help all of you who came here this morning to get better. And I wanted to make sure that I gave you your money's worth, and hopefully I did. But it's one of those things that I understand that even though that's my calling and that's what I'm called to do, that person working at the front desk at your office, they may not want to have the conversation about Well, are you a part of Black Lives Matter? What do you think about the riots last night? Why is LeBron James speaking up? Why doesn't he just play basketball? I mean, oh my goodness. Some people just say, I'm having a hard enough time explaining to my own child to not hate others or why people hate them. I don't want to come to work and have to explain it to everyone else as well. So my goodness, you brought tears to my eyes when you made that statement, because together we are better. And together, just like you were speaking on behalf of your African American colleagues, I'm speaking on behalf of all of my colleagues, regardless of what culture they're from, white, Asian, Indian, it doesn't matter. I'm trying to speak to the world and explain that people aren't bad. There are bad people in this world, but the majority of us are good people and we actually want to help. So that one comment that you made, if you continue to do that, that's probably the most powerful thing, because the moment we start believing we can't make a difference, we won't. Every single one of us can make a difference in our community, in our family, and in our circle of influence. And by doing that, the ripple effect will take place.
Definitely. I thought that was a very powerful comment as well, especially since you had mentioned earlier that you felt it was your responsibility. You might be the first Black man that anyone has ever spoken to. And I was like, wow, I've never even thought about that. So I thought that was a very, very great comment. So thank you for the person who submitted that. We do have a ton of questions rolling in now. So with greater awareness for the need for diversity and inclusion, many boards are looking for candidates that reflect that. How can our boards and organizations be respectful to potential candidates that are feeling overwhelmed by board invitations? And how can we expand our pool of qualified candidates?
Oh, listen, that one hit near and dear to my heart, because I've had to learn to say no to a couple things. And, somebody asked me, they said, Dan, the boards that you serve on, why those? And I had to take a step back and I recognized they're all helping women or children. That's something that's very important to me. What I would say is, you take a look at the people that are supporting your organization, whether it's that they're giving back financially, whether they're supporting your local events. That's somebody that's supporting you for a reason. That means that they care about the mission and the cause. I would then sit down with those people and say, we would love, first off, it's okay to say, we would like a more diverse representation on our board. They get it. Listen, I understand. If you guys had any idea the number of politicians right now that are calling me saying, Dan, will you get out with your family and say that you're supporting me? Listen, I tell people I'm not Democratic, I'm not Republican, I vote for people. So I've got people on both sides just saying, hey, how about the Russell family doesn't end? I'm like, no, I can't do that. So, I get it that a lot of people are asking and they want that. It's okay to say that you're looking for diverse representation. But also, I think it's very important that if you've identified a certain person, tell them why. Tell them why. Hey, Dan Russell, I think because I've seen what you're doing in the community, I see how you are with your family, I see how you are with children, I see how you are with mentoring. I think you would be a great addition to our board. That's what people want to see beyond just, hey, we're looking for more diversity. Because you don't want that person to say, oh, so you don't have any women. I guess I'll be the token woman. Oh, you don't have any Black people. I guess I'll sign up, right? You don't want that. I think taking a step beyond just telling them that you're looking for a more diverse representation, telling them why specifically them. And then I think being very specific about what you need from them as a board member, because sitting on several different boards, I never want to overpromise and underdeliver. I never want to leave them disappointed. We're all busy already running an organization, managing our own families and different things. So I think the time commitment, what you're looking for from them, listen, one thing I've found is people want to help. And when you find philanthropic people and people who are aware of social injustice happening, they want to help. So I would just say, reach out, start to look, really dig into the LinkedIn profiles, ask people that know them, and ask if they're really the type of person you want on your board, and then sit down and explain to them your cause and why you think they're a good fit.
Can I just chime in here? I would be remiss if I didn't say something about that. So Traverse Connect's Professional Development Committee is working on a program to educate individuals on how to serve on a board. And I feel like that's a great place for those of diversity or, women, younger people wanting to know how to be on a board, to look for that information coming soon. So I just want to let everyone know in our community that we're working on that.
That is fantastic, Brenda.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. And this goes hand in hand with the board comment, almost taking it a step further, but in a slightly different direction. So the question is, what is your perspective on reverse discrimination? For example, two candidates apply for a job. One is a white man with 5 years of relative experience, and the other candidate is a Black man with 1 year of relevant experience. The Black man is hired because he is Black, and the organization is trying to be more diverse, even though the white man has more experience.
Listen, I know this comment, it doesn't go over well with everybody. My answer is, I'm hiring the white male because they're more qualified. If I'm looking at that point to try to hire the best candidate, that's who I'm looking to hire. Now, what I'm going to say beyond that is, I'm going to challenge myself then to say, can I open up more positions? Because if the Black man with 1 year of experience still brought something that I wanted to hire them, I always have to stop because, again, we do payroll and HR for about 100,000 employees across all 50 states, and we manage their HR. And this is a true conversation we have with people where we look and we say, okay, what if the other candidate wasn't there? Okay, so now let's for a moment remove the white gentleman with 5 years of experience who was knocking it out of the park. If just the Black gentleman with 1 year of experience is sitting there, is that somebody you want to hire? Is that somebody you have to have in your organization? If it is, that's when you try to find a way to bring that person in. That's when maybe you keep that resume handy and you say, listen, we've got something else maybe coming here in a couple months. I'm not going to forget about you. I agree 100%. It's wrong to discriminate. It's wrong to tell someone because they are a white male and they're qualified that they don't get the position because someone else's skin color or background, gave them that chance. Now, what I'm going to say though is you've got to be intentional as a corporation to say, are we opening up the right positions? Because the reality is, listen, when you start to try to hire minorities, I had someone just the other day, a CEO that I was counseling, that said, Dan, within our organization, we have challenges because the people that we want to promote that are minorities, they came in with, as you just said, less education than others. And that's when we started to talk about their tuition reimbursement program, their growth track plan. And it was interesting, and I'll share this with you. I'm not going to say who the CEO was, but the CEO goes, oh, well, we've got a growth track for our employees and we do tuition reimbursement. And his HR director said, I actually have to add, I spoke with one of our African-American managers the other day. She's been with us 2 years and she didn't know that it even existed. So here they have a tuition reimbursement plan. They've got this growth track, but the employees didn't even know about it. So we have to make sure that we're trying to provide the opportunities for minorities or less qualified people to come in and grow within our organization. But I do not agree with not hiring one person and they're more qualified. I don't think that that's fair or equitable in any way, shape, or form. Now, what I will say though is then, hey, if you're looking at two people and it's identical, and you've got a woman and you've got a male, and the two are identical on paper in every aspect, if your organization is trying to promote diversity, inclusion, equity, then okay, maybe you hire the woman then because it's falling in line with what you're trying to do as an organization. But that's a level playing field, not the description that you did.
Perfect. Thank you for that response. I think I've heard that come up before when I was in a recruiting position. So it's really interesting to hear your take on that. How can we remove politics at work when discussing DE&I initiatives, especially in the coming months?
Well, you make it a safe place, right? And you have to start off with that. When we talk about being intentional, this is where you walk into a room and you tell people, listen, we're accepting of all people. We're accepting of all opinions. We're accepting of all the people that are supporting the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. That's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're here to talk about today is our company and what we can do to make our company better. When you start to bring, political influence in, oh my goodness, you're in for more of a challenge than just diversity and inclusion and equity. Now we're taking on, oh my goodness, Donald Trump said this on a tweet. And oh my goodness, I saw Biden do this on a video. That's something that within your organization, I'm telling you, that's not a monster you want to take on. That's just, it's out of control, right? And people are very passionate about it. So, I mean, if you want to light a fire, that's a real quick way to do it. So I would say that when you're having that conversation, you start off with saying, we're here to talk about diversity and inclusion. We're not looking for ways to divide. We're not looking at ways to argue with one another. We're looking at ways that we can bridge this gap. We're looking at ways that we can come together as one. Like I said, it may not even be that you're hiring different people within your organization because that opportunity may not be there, but maybe it's an initiative that you want to get behind. Maybe it's something that together as an organization you say, wow, I didn't know that a place like Covenant House existed and they help homeless kids from age 16 to 25, and everybody in the room goes, wow, I can get on board with that. Well, guess what? The organization in Detroit, when you go there, I'd say typically 80% of the young adults there are African American. The other 20% happen to be white, and that's okay. But maybe that's the opportunity to help give back and serve underprivileged people from that community that everybody in a room can get on board with. Hey, nobody should have, not have a place to live when you're a child, and let's see if we can steer them into a better path. Maybe it is something like an organization helping victims of human trafficking. Maybe we can all get on board with that. So let's maybe find some commonality. And what you'll find is when you start with that, now you grow from that. And listen, there's some great, great organizations out there. I mean, you look at, what Doug and Consumers Energy is doing, around the state. They're serving some amazing, amazing organizations. So maybe you ask people to bring some ideas and you start with supporting some of these organizations. Maybe you're not even giving money. Maybe you're volunteering on a Saturday to go help paint a house for, again, maybe a woman who's a victim of human trafficking, who's getting her first house for the first time. Maybe it's something like that where we're just volunteering time and it has nothing to do with money. The other board I sit on, Winning Futures, it's a mentorship program for kids. And what happens is CEOs and executives allow their employee to mentor a kid for 1 hour every single week. And they're kids from all different backgrounds. But again, you're getting involved together to help others, and we're looking past color. We're looking to the fact that these people are just underserved, they have needs, they need help, and you're trying to help them. And when you can come together and agree there, the growth that comes from that is big. And then it starts to branch into other things. So I think when you come together, you've got to lay it out at the beginning. This isn't about politics. This isn't about an initiative. I've told people, I don't say the Black Lives Matter tagline, and people have asked me why. And I've said, well, I do believe Black Lives Matter, obviously, mine, my wife's, my kids. I do believe Blue Lives Matter. I've got family in law enforcement. I've got some of my closest friends are in law enforcement. I do believe White Lives Matter. And I go through and I say, so yeah, in my world, I don't subscribe to slogans, because the moment you do that, then guess what? Now, if you say Black Lives Matter today, and then someone tomorrow is saying Black Lives Matter, and they're throwing a brick through a window and they're spray painting a building and they're setting a fire, then that now represents me too. And so I try to stay away from that. So I would encourage you, when you sit down and you start that platform with your team, it's not about politics. We're not talking about Black Lives Matter. We're not talking about Blue Lives Matter. We're talking about our organization and how we can become better as a culture.
Thank you. Wow, that was a really great response. Dan, I do want to be respectful of your time. I know you are a very busy man. So we have 4 questions left. Is it best for me to, okay, I was going to say I can email it out, or I can ask you now. Just
I'm here for you guys right now, so fire away.
And anyone that does need to hop off, a friendly reminder, this is being recorded and will be posted to our website and our social media channels. So if you have to hop off but have a question, it will be addressed.
Fantastic.
So Dan, these last questions are, and you and I were speaking about this earlier, and I said I would ask this question because it's very interesting, and I think a lot of people wonder, how should you address an African American individual when you're talking to them? What is the proper terminology to use?
So again, I wish I could answer for all people, but here's how my answer would come back. What do you want to call me? Because if I said, hey, do you know Brenda? And they said, no. Oh yeah, in Traverse City. Yeah, you met her at the HR. Yeah, she's got lighter brown hair, great smile, always friendly. Or what about Molly? Yeah, she's got blondish brown hair, kind of down to here. She's just, that's how I would describe you. I would never say my Caucasian friend, Brenda. Because if I ever introduced Brenda as my Caucasian friend, she would walk away and go, oh, I didn't think Dan had an issue with my race, but the way he just described me kind of made me feel like he did. If African American rolls off of your tongue, and just today, I hope you guys notice in my presentation speech and answers, I've described myself as Black, I've described myself as African American, I've described myself as a minority, I've described myself as a person of color. I can be any of the above. So what I would say is, what you're comfortable with, say that. It's when you're trying to make yourself be politically correct, that's when it feels uncomfortable to the other person. When you say, my African American friend Dan, it comes across uncomfortable to me. So it's one of those things where it's okay to say Black, it's okay to say person of color, it's okay to say African American, but I would say most people are okay with Black. No different than if someone were to describe you, most people would describe you as white. Now, if we wanted to start talking about, oh my goodness, well, you have French and you have German and you have Dutch and you have, right? There's so much more that makes you white, right? No different than myself when I look at my heritage, African American, Native American, Scottish. I mean, there's a lot back in my family tree that I was like, whoa, didn't know about that. But guess what? People still see me as Black, and that's okay. So I would say as long as you're comfortable with it, just let it flow, and you don't have to try to make everybody happy. It's not going to happen. The moment you call somebody Black and they go, well, I'd rather you refer to me as African American. Okay, and then moving forward, refer to them as African American. But in reality, you may not ever have to use it again. You just say, it's Doug, it's Brenda, it's Molly.
I love that. I love the way of describing, using the descriptions of who they are, hair color, their height, their personality. It's just really interesting topic in general. So thank you for expanding on that.
Absolutely.
The next question was, the lack of racial diversity in our neighborhood is a barrier for people choosing to live and work here. How can businesses help create a community culture in Traverse City that feels safe and affirming to people of color?
Well, you know what? I'm glad somebody asked that question, because I'm going to say this specifically about Traverse City. In other communities in Western Michigan, my daughter played basketball for Hope College. And I'll never forget when we went over to Holland, we drove over, it was my first time in Holland, and we're walking around, and we thought it was like a prank because everybody was so nice. I mean, it was weird. They were like, hi, how are you? Welcome. And I'm like, okay. And then I remember asking the basketball coach, Coach Morehouse, Brian Morehouse, who's a dear friend, dear friend to this day. And I looked at him and I said, how many Blacks do you have here? And he looked at me and he goes, Mr. Russell, I'm going to tell you, not a lot. He goes, and I wish we had more. He said, but what I will tell you is this is a great community, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that this is a safe environment for your daughter to just be able to grow and live and enjoy her time here at Hope College. That answer for me, I said, this is where my daughter needs to go. So not only did my daughter come, but I introduced the school to another young woman who was at Country Day, and the two of them went. And they just finished their career there just a few months ago. What an amazing experience they had. My wife and I were so in love with Holland and the way that people treated us. They were so kind. They were so inviting. And no different than when we come and we vacation in Travis. The people are so kind. The restaurants, the people at the hotel. Listen, there's something special about what you guys have there in Traverse City, and I think you know that. But what I would say is I would continue to promote that. I would continue to promote that, hey, we are a community, that we love people. We are inviting. We are accepting. We are just so kind. And when that becomes a part of the culture and everybody from the businesses to the neighborhoods just really take on that image, then when somebody does come to look at that house, you know, somebody is looking at a house right next door that was being built in my neighborhood. I want to listen. In my community I live in Clarkston, you pull it up, it is 0.1% African American. Not 1%, 0.1. Okay, so there's not a lot. But somebody drove by and they were driving really slow. So what did I do? Just like every neighbor, why is there a slow car driving in my neighborhood? Then I realized people were looking at a brand new house being built. And I turned around and I waved, and they both waved back. And great, they saw, hey, an African American person lives in the neighborhood and he looks friendly. There's another house that got built on the other side of us, and the guy came over and he said, would it be okay if we just used your electrical outlet until the electric got hooked up to get started? I'm like, absolutely. Oh my goodness, somebody a few doors down, when they moved in, my wife and I bought them a pie. That's what you do, right? I would just say continue to be authentic, continue to be who you are. I don't think you have to try to be anyone else. You can't make minorities or people of color move into your community, but what you can continue to do is just be great the way you guys are. Continue to show everybody what Traverse City is all about. And I think the more people that discover Traverse City, the more people are going to want to live there, and the more people will want to continue to vacation there because of what you do offer. So I would just say stay authentic, don't change. And I'm saying this personally. I have been to Traverse City so many times, and the people are amazing. So don't change who you are. Continue to be authentic and continue to promote that.
Thank you for saying that. We have one last question here for you, and I don't know what this acronym stands for, so I'm hoping you do. What about BICOP, who do not want to be a token or trailblazer?
Again, this is when we were, it's very similar to me talking about the one woman who said, I don't want to be the person to speak on behalf of all Blacks. Listen, it's okay. If they don't want to, give them the opportunity. If they don't want to speak, you don't force it, right? You give, if you're putting together a circle, a round table discussion, and you're putting together a board within your organization, and you offer it up to the whole company and that person doesn't sign up, okay, don't force them. Don't make that person join on because they're a person of color. Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't want to be the token Black person. And, listen, there are times that I've had organizations when I was a vice president at the bank, and I had one of the executive team members come up and say, Dan, we don't have any other Black vice presidents in the entire country. How do we fix this? And, we've talked about it. But you're right, you can't expect everybody to want to speak on behalf of your organization. And what I will tell you, just like the way Brenda and I were introduced, there are people like me out there. I'm happy to speak to your organization if that helps. There's other people maybe in your community. It doesn't even have to be anyone that's affiliated with your organization. Maybe you just bring in an African-American person to talk about, hey, listen, I've had, bank tellers that have treated me differently than the person in front of me, right? There's things like that. I've gone to a restaurant and been treated differently. It's one of those things you have to talk to your organization about the way that you handle your customers, the way that you speak with your coworkers. But no, every single person is not going to want to be Dan Russell. I'll tell you, my wife and I had to have a very, very long and difficult conversation when I took even a greater step forward in this space, because hopefully I've made a lot of you feel comfortable today. Hopefully I have helped bridge this gap and give you some ideas. But everybody isn't happy with the way that I say it. There are some people that they want me to say that, we're still very far behind as a nation in terms of bringing social equity and diversity. There are people that want me to bring up a lot of things that happened in the past. There are people that want me to bring up, more about the shooting, more about, the young man who was shot in the back 7 times, more people that want me to talk about Breonna Taylor, more people that want me to talk about Ahmaud Arbery. And listen, what I tell them is, I think the media has done a good enough job of letting everybody know what happened. I don't believe any of those situations. Nobody wants to see that, right? I don't want to see anybody get killed. If you tell me tomorrow that a person was shot and killed, I don't care who they were shot and killed by, whether it was a police officer, whether it was by a community member. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want it. It breaks my heart because someone lost their life. It was somebody's son, it was somebody's father, it was somebody's mother. It breaks my heart. Now, I didn't say that it was a person killed by a police officer. I didn't say it was a black male. I didn't say it was a white female. It doesn't matter. I think the human race hurts when people die. And I think, when we watched the 8 minutes and 46 seconds when the police officer was leaning on George Floyd's neck, I think everyone as a whole said, gosh, that's not right for anybody. Regardless of who you are, what you've done, nobody wants to see that. So I think just as people, we want to get better, but again, just recognize you're correct. Not everybody wants to be the spokesperson. You will also find people that will say, hey, I don't say that George Floyd speaks for the Russell family, because there were some things that George Floyd did long before that incident that weren't good. And so it's very hard when you start to lump people together. So I think sometimes it is challenging to find people that want to speak out, but if you're having trouble in that area, again, I'd be more than happy to talk to your organization or help you find someone that could be a good fit.
Thank you so much. And someone did ask if you are considering running for public office.
I have been asked so many times recently, and my wife gave a hard no. I'm just going to tell you guys, if my wife throws it, if somebody convinces my wife, I'm all for it. But at this time, I'm using, thank God, the ability and the platform that I've been given to just spread the message of bringing people together, spreading education, awareness. I'm truly honored that I'm being looked at as someone who can help in this area. It was humbling when somebody came to me right after all this started and they said, Dan, when are you going to make a public comment? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, you are one of the most recognizable African-American faces in Michigan, and people are looking for you to say something. It was humbling. It was a little scary at the same time. But as I said, I feel the responsibility for it. I would encourage all of you, if you have not ever seen, most people have seen Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. There's another speech that he gave, and it's called I've Been to the Mountaintop. And it was the speech that he gave the night before he was assassinated. And I'm going to end with this. It was a night that it was horrible weather. He was supposed to speak to this large church, and Martin Luther King Jr. was very sick that night. So he actually told the people who worked with him, go over. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to come because the weather's bad. Just please send my regards. Tell them I apologize. I'm not feeling well. They called him a few minutes later and they said, Martin, the church is packed. Everybody still came. Do you still want us to tell them that you can't come? And he said, no, I'll be there. And what's so powerful about that speech is when you listen to it, everything in me believes that he knew that it was going to be his final speech. It was very different than the speeches that he had delivered before. There was a lot of passion. But there was one part in there that he said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we will get there. That still, even as I say it, it gives me goosebumps, because here is a man who there's something about that death threat that he had received that he knew it was probably going to be real that time. It was his final speech. He could have said something to bring division. He knew that the world was going to be so let down that their person that had carried this torch was now gone. But when he had the opportunity, he let people know that we together as people can come together and we can make a difference. And it's going to happen, it has happened, and it will continue to happen. And so I'm honored that I had the opportunity to carry some of that legacy on. I think there's other great individuals of all backgrounds and all ethnicities doing it. So I'm just humbled that I'm a small part of it.
Thank you so much. And you know, a lot of people did ask, and I was going to save this for the end, of course, being respectful of your time and other people's time, if you had recommendations on movies, on books, on podcasts. So we will be sending out an email. Dan, I'll connect with you to get those recommendations from you. And a lot of people also asked about Brenda's comments in the beginning in regards to our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit that will be coming in early in 2021. So I will also include information about that in this email as well. So all of you will be receiving that follow-up communication with the video once we do have it posted. So Dan, I know Brenda will probably want to thank you as well, but I just want to thank you. I have learned so much already in this short time that we had together. I cannot thank you enough for your knowledge, your expertise, and your honesty in this conversation today.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, and
Right.
thank you, Doug. Yeah, thank you, Doug, for your support. We hope to see you again soon, Dan. We appreciate the last minute call, and gosh, everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone. Have a great day.
Too.